one of my favorite episodes, or a good episode that I like, was actually the very first episode with Trudy. Like, it really kind of opened my eyes, as far as, and she spoke very plain, not too complicated, and speaking terms that I really didn't know. You know what I'm saying? Because being new to the compliance and being new to like a lot of the terms and things of that nature, even though, like I said, I've been in brokerage, but it's just not things that we have.
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
For our SimplyTrade fans, we are having a first for ourselves. We are excited about this show. But Lalo, why don't you introduce who we've got on the show today?
I will. Thank you, Andy. So we have Whitney Carter, and Whitney Carter, we ran into her at ICPA in Orlando. So we ran into her. She almost kind of ran into us. She saw us there, and it's like, oh my goodness, I listened to the show, and we connected. And so we had a few sound bites and stuff from her from the ICPA show. So we have Whitney, and then we have Teresa Bravo. So Teresa Bravo is a customer of Global Training Center that attended some of our training. It's a foundation building training that we have, and she's aspiring to take her broker's license, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. And then we finally have Nina Jones. Nina Jones is a co-worker of one of our guests on our podcast. In fact, she's one of our earlier guests with Bonnie Kirsch. And so she works for Wayfair. And so I'll let them all introduce themselves here one by one. But so that's who we have on the show right now. So Whitney, we'll let you go first.
Thanks, Lilo. So I am a corporate compliance manager for Greenworks Tools. So I oversee our domestic dangerous goods. We manufacture battery-operated power tools. I'm sure some of you have those at home. So I oversee our dangerous goods program for domestic and international, and then I also oversee our import and export compliance.
Awesome. Thanks, Whitney. How about you, Teresa?
Well, I'm a student of you, of yours, the crowd. So, yes, as you mentioned, that's how we started. Actually, prior to that, when I was looking to re-enter the industry, my background has always been in sales. And I had worked for a Japanese trading company where I always found the logistics end of it very fascinating, more so than being on the road and doing all that. That was all great, but that is just something that has always fascinated me. And coming back into the scene, I contacted Lalo about, I'm like, where do you get classes for that? And at the time, that nothing really existed. And it was through our contacts that you put me through with Crowd and now SimplyTrade. And it's just been great. It's been a great reintroduction.
Awesome. Thank you, Teresa. And did you take the broker's exam this last April? You say you did.
I did. I took it as well.
Oh, both of you did. Okay. Well, okay. So I heard the bad news is that this was one of the lowest pass rates in the recent, I think, 5 years. It was at 5.2% or something like that. So, well, good luck to you ladies. If you need anybody to help you protest or, protest any of the questions, I know someone really, really good. So anyway, and Nina. So we have Nina from Wayfair.
Hi, thanks, Lalo. Let's see about me. I work for Wayfair currently. I've been on the global trade compliance team for about 8 months. I would say about 8 months. I actually joined Wayfair to work on the brokerage piece because brokerage is more so my background, which is customs brokerage. But I got the opportunity to join the trade compliance team, which is something I've always wanted to do. But, working for a broker, it's kind of hard to get into the compliance side. So currently what I'm doing right now, we're just working on various projects, just learning and getting my feet wet with the actual industry itself. It's kind of hard to switch my brain off from the brokerage side to actually being an importer. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. and I am currently studying for my brokerage license. So to hope to take it in October. But
if you miss anything in April, Nina, you're probably doing well, hanging in there for October.
I took it the last 2 times, and the last time they're like, everybody was saying, oh, the pass rate, it won't be that hard in April, but it was 11.1% in October, and then this one was 5.5%. And so, Nina, I think you got a really great shot. We got a great shot in October.
Fingers crossed, That's what I'm trying to go with. So yeah. So and I met you guys at the conference and started listening to the show, and here I am.
Right off the bat, what about, since you're all kind of aspiring to better yourselves and all that, the shows that we've had on some of the career moves, how to talk to upper management, how to translate, complex into simplicity, and, as far as recruiting and stuff like that, have any of those shows that you've listened to, have they been of any benefit to you?
Absolutely. Andy, actually, having been in sales, and then the few times that you're in the office and you get to actually see the paperwork that follows what it took to get our product over here, every one of the episodes speaks to a different compartment and department of what we do or have done. And it only kind of, I'm like, well, I thought I was curious about that until I heard some of the episodes. You had a 2-part episode once with it was just fascinating. It was just absolutely fascinating. So it's great to hear that you're not imagining what you think was interesting and what you think you come across in articles. So it's been very interesting because it touches on just about every department. Compliance, you'll do compliance, and then you'll do anything from the actual logistics. So it's been very interesting how the platform unfolds.
I think that it helps to articulate to people who may not understand compliance. So having a better understanding on 301 or why it's important that we know who our ultimate customer is when we're exporting, or knowing who the customer's customer is. And just by the information, it helps me. I can speak to trade compliance people, but I sometimes struggle when I'm trying to articulate something to an executive where I have 2.3 minutes to articulate, 3 pages worth of research or something of that nature. And so just by the episodes help me where I can digest it and then present it to them in a different way. And one thing that I take away is not, this is a hard stop, but here are our options and here's the risk associated. So not, no, we can't do this, but here are the options available. Here's what I can offer you.
It sounds like in what you were looking at is you were prepared to go in and you were giving them options. You weren't just like, here it is, and then expecting them to come back and say, here's what I want you to do. You're giving them the answers to say multiple choice, but here you go. Is that a good summary on that?
Yes, that's correct. Right. So it allows me to present to them and answer questions that they're probably going to ask before they even have the opportunity to ask the questions.
Yeah, a lot of the episodes, it did help me to kind of understand a lot of the things, to be honest, that I really didn't have to know being on the brokerage side. On the brokerage side, we got the information from the importer. So to actually, they went into depth, a lot of things that, okay, so this is what it means. This is why it's so important. Like, a lot of the things, like as far as, like anti-dumping and things of that nature, like I knew what it was, but just now how important it is to make sure that you knew that information. One of my favorite episodes, or a good episode that I like, was actually the very first episode with Trudy. Like it really kind of opened my eyes, as far as, and she spoke very plain, not too complicated, and speak in terms that I really didn't know. You know what I'm saying? Because being new to the compliance and being new to like a lot of the terms and things of that nature, even though, like I said, I've been in brokerage, but it's just not things that we had to know. So I do find like a lot of the episodes, they just taught me things that I just didn't know and helped me be able to, as Whitney said, just articulate some of the things a little better when I'm speaking to other people that are in the industry as well, like some of my friends and old colleagues, so they can understand some of the importance of why they are doing the things that they do.
That's intimidating right there. Nina, learning from it from the broker end, I was in sales trying to immerse myself. So I understand that there are times when I think, in Whitney's case, oh my God, this episode's going to be over my head and very intimidating. And it turns out to be so informative and very interesting, right, Nina? Because not to SimplyTrade. Now, hello, I get it. It's simply put in terms for us to understand, because there are, it's ever growing and changing, and there's so much emphasis on the importance of compliance that that in itself is intimidating. Just the demands that are being made, and the platform is informative to a level where you can understand it, not be intimidated, and then. Not to mention at the end, you have a plethora of resources that it is built into it. So yeah, absolutely.
I think the resource aspect, being in compliance, I am the only one in my, I'm a one-man team, right? And so just having information that helps the company, right? It's a free resource that in turn really makes the company money, because I have an understanding and I'm able to then take that back to my company and explain it to my coworkers too, just to give people, help them have an understanding. So it's not so intimidating for anybody, and it makes it's approachable. The episodes are approachable, and it doesn't make you feel stupid for having those questions.
Awesome.
Well, listen, that's one of the things that is, Lalo and I we really appreciate your feedback. But listen, this is where you get to tell us what's good, what's bad, and all that. But remember. I've got to keep it simple. I'm dumb as a box of rocks. So hopefully that approach is working, because I feel like there's some of us that are like in the same boat I'm in. So if we can understand it there together, then there you go. But that said, I will say Lalo and I we talk strategy about our shows. We talk about what, we're trying to figure out. Will people really want to listen to this? So let me ask this question, and I know, Lalo, you've got some good questions that are coming up too. Are we hitting the topics that seem to be good, or is it we'll lose you or something like that? Like, oh no, they're going off on a tangent or something, or is it something that is like it really truly is informative for you?
I find them to be very informative. Now, mind you, because everything's so new to me, everything is exciting, right? So it's very new. But I'm trying to think right off the top of my head. You had a 2-part series with a gentleman who went into the history. I felt like I was in do you know what I'm talking about, Nina? They did it
yes,
in 2 parts.
Yeah.
That was worth the price of admission. I would have paid a university price to sit
Larry
there.
Hansen.
That was with Larry. That was a great show. Yes, that was a great show. That was with Larry Hansen. And I was like, I was in the podcast and I'm listening to it and I was like, holy smokes, I love this. I mean, I was just so into it.
It was like, I felt like I just accidentally stumbled into a Harvard University class, like I was on my way to, maybe the gift shop, and I just peeked in and that was it. Game over. Right? So it's like, oh my God. And then the history lesson, because you tend to showcase those that have a tremendous amount of experience. This has come a long way. Even for me, from back in the time when it was all I had to really about was sales. And then, we had the office people to worry about how to get it from point A to point B. But it's just so intriguing and complicated, and it's becoming more and more complicated, but more and more interesting. And you just tend to have these guests that have seen it all, been there, and then just keep up with, compliance in itself is intimidating. I mean, that's like an ever-moving target.
I really like the episode about the automated AI classification. So I come from it from my standpoint. I don't know if you ladies are also on the ICPA or part of ICPA, but you'll get the questions that come in from the website. And so I'm always looking to see how can we better our compliance program. let me state that we are just developing a compliance program. So everything has to be built from the ground up. So just understanding when you have such a large task at hand, like what does that look like? And documents are something that's been talked about at the conference. And I mean, I'm just looking at it to see, how do I get my, the US team and my origin team on the same accord with our HTS codes, or there's so many things to look at. So anything compliance related, and how do you structure your compliance program, right? Like what are the main things? Like if you don't have one, these things need to happen first. And so I was talking with somebody from ICPA, and I was like, I feel like I'm drowning. And she said, you're not alone. Most people won't tell you that. She said, most people like Amazon, these companies that you think have it all together and they would never miss a document. And she said, you'd be surprised that there's other companies as well, big or small, that don't have the structure in place. It's a work in progress constantly. So just with that, the AI classification and adapting that, right? Because everything is going GPT is everything now. And so how do we adapt that and be forward thinking? So that was I really took a lot from that episode, and just seeing how I can bring that to my company, and is it something that we need and to benefit the company?
Are we able to communicate in our shows? The one thing I always want to strive and do, and again, Lalo and I tag team on this really well. I would say that our objective here is to give you either a nugget of knowledge or that you can take away so you can be more proficient on a topic, or you can identify your next 1, 2, or 3 steps in as far as actions. Are you getting that from our shows?
I am. If I have a question or if I need to know something more, then I will go to the podcast and into the library and see where that episode lies, right? I deal a lot with China. So the 301 tariffs, it's in just current events as well. Your Sunday episodes that you do about current events is always really great. Yeah. Weekly roundup, right?
Okay. Well, I saw a big smile on everybody's face when you mentioned the weekly roundup. I was wondering, we always wonder, is this going to be a good segment or not? And I see you smile, so I'm glad that it seems like you all are approving of that. So that's awesome.
But because it doesn't matter what your expertise level, they tend to find. She finds articles that she's just so honest about it. She goes, I have no idea what I'm saying, but I could tell this is important. The Saturday Night Live version of SimplyTrade.
I got to say, Anik she's so fantastic, but she's brutally honest, and she's young, but it's like, I love the questions and stuff. We just got through recording just before this one, the show now, and it was interesting, and it was talking about an article about some environmental laws and taxes coming and all that. And she's going, it sounds good, and all that. And I'm going, she said, all right, Andy, what do you think? Absolutely not. I'm like, that sounds good. And we were going back and forth. So it's like, I'm going to step right into it, but it's like, okay, now I'm going to give you, it's like, I may be plowing too close to the corn, but it's like, I'm going to tell you what it is. So anyway.
So Anik is a good example of, and maybe this we show this a lot in the show, and we actually talk a lot about it in the show, is she's a good example of how all of us came into trade by accident. We didn't say, hey, I'm going to be an importer. I'm going to be a broker. I'm going to, you know what I mean? We just accidentally got it. When I first started, I was going to be a computer programmer. That's all I was going to do. I just happened to be writing software in global trade, and so I was like, okay, 35 years later, here I am, right? So she's exactly the same example. We hired her as an intern, a marketing intern, fresh out of college. She had a master's degree. We were looking for an intern in marketing. She said, well, what the heck? I'll try that. She's been just like a sponge, absorbing everything, so everything is she wants to learn everything. She doesn't get it, and of course, and we tell her that's the appeal that you have when you come on the show is there's people out there like you, that, and she's not embarrassed to say, I don't know what this is, and she's not embarrassed to, to just jump in and say, well, explain this to me, and I love that she does that. I'm glad that is coming across that way because, sometimes we can lose. A few years back when I first got my first talking engagement with ICPA, and I'm talking about like maybe 13, 14 years ago that I was a speaker at one of the sessions on ICPA. God, it was so intimidating. Because everybody knows everything and you're afraid that the audience is going to just come at you like because they know more than you do or whatever, but it's so different now, in the sense that which by the way, they were not like that. ICPA is such a cool group, so anyway, but Anik is like that. Like she's coming into it. She stumbled into trade by accident. She had to move back to Germany for a little while and she's there and she still wants to do this. We told her, hey, no obligations, no commitments. And she's like, are you kidding? I still want to do this. I was like, okay, then, you're hired, so I'm glad she's still doing this. So I'm glad you guys are liking that.
It seems like everybody can identify with Anik and all that. So here's a question, though, is when we're responding to some of the questions that come up, like the weekly roundup and all that, are you looking at us like Lala and I are been around since dirt, so it's, we're giving our opinion. But, when we start giving these answers, is it like, Andy's full of beans or he knows what he's talking about or whatever, or, Lala's smarter than I am. So it's like, as we get into this, but is it something like that gets you to think or is it something like, oh no, here we go?
I think for me, I appreciate your knowledge, right? I've been in international trade for 5 years now and in corporate compliance for just over a year. So I want to absorb as much as I can. And I understand that, I'm not going to get it anywhere else. So this is why it's a great resource. The podcast is a great resource on various subjects as well.
I actually like the difference of when you and Lalo both give your opinion on the subject matter. And I like the fact that you're explaining it to her as well as like us, the listeners. And I just like it. And I feel like, I'm Whitney. How else am I going to get this information? I like it, I like it. And it's helping me, even if like sometimes, I'm going to be honest, a lot of this stuff I'm looking at it like, it doesn't really apply to what I'm doing right now, but it could in the future. So that's the way that I take all of the episodes that I listen to, even though I'm going to be honest, I do typically listen to the ones that kind of resonates with what I'm doing right now, because I'm still learning, my job, I guess you could say, and all the different commodities. And we're just, we have the Section 301, we have the Uyghur. So I'm more so listening to those, but I do love that. I do love the weekly roundup because I don't think it is as formal as the rest of the podcast. So I like that you guys are a little more, I guess, human, or however to explain it.
And what about, okay, so we made a decision early on to try to make these short, 30 minutes, 35 minutes. I know some go 40, 45 minutes. I know like Larry's episode, we were supposed to only air 30 minutes, but I just couldn't cut any of it. I had to have the whole history. Honestly, that's the way it was. The kickoff show for the 2023 with George and Adrian, we were only supposed to do 30 minutes. I was like, I can't. I have to air the whole hour, But anyway, and y'all may not be aware of this or not, or maybe you are, but we do have the videos, or we're trying to put all the videos up on YouTube. Does that bother you that we don't have the full episode? Because a lot of people say they like it for commuting, but you don't commute for an hour. Well, I guess some people may commute for an hour, but 30 minutes, 40 minutes max. Are we still hitting the hitting it there, or what are your opinions on that?
I appreciate the episodes because I can generally listen to two. So whether I'm walking my dog, so I'm going to take my dog, and then by the time I take her on her full walk, I've listened to a whole episode. So, which is great, right? And then I also have a hour commute to and from work. So it's great. I like the 30 to 45 minutes. About an hour, it breaks it up. So I'm not sure that I would be able to get back to it. So, that's from my perspective.
And I think the 45 minutes works, which is because you're able to hit the replay button if you need to. And it's just enough to where you're not overwhelmed. Probably like, this is kind of new. You're trying to learn it all at once. So and you pack a lot. It's not like you're doing 45 minutes of filler time. I mean, you're packing a lot in that time.
Well, you all met Mara before we came on the show. Our producer. I mean, she knows that poor girl. Our editor and producer Mara is. We take 1 hour, an hour and 15 minutes of show and try to compact it down to 45 minutes or 30 minutes, and she's getting all the edits from me, and so she's probably pulling her hair. But yeah, I mean, exactly. It is a lot. We don't. You're right. And I'm glad that you're saying that it's good information that you're getting in that time frame, and it's not just, fluff, like you said. So that's good. Another thing I was going to ask is on anything that's actionable. Like, have any of you or anybody that maybe that you might have done because of the show? Like, I heard it on the show, I'm going to do this. I heard in the show I'm going to reach out to so-and-so, or, et cetera. I don't know. Has any of that worked for any of you? That's
how I ended up at ICPA. You and Andy were saying, we were just at this conference. Make sure you come and see us at ICPA. We're going to have a booth. So I don't know if when I listened to it, if you had just done one, and that was maybe the first one. But ICPA and then the AI classification, we're going to try that out as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. Well, you're not the first to tell us about ICPA, which is good. So
it made me jump on the platform for continuing education because, well, I don't know if you recall, I actually called you once before all this started. I said, well, where do you take a class on this? And you're like, well, you don't. I'm like, well, how do you get in here? I'm like, where do I go? You don't. I'm like, for the love of Pete. So, yeah, it's involved and helped me even further my interest and stay in it. So, yeah, doing a great job. I don't know of any other other platform.
Awesome. Yeah.
So you got a good thing. Awesome. You got a good show going.
Glad to hear. Awesome.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing. Like, basically, I did. It caused me to be able to reach out to some, I like the fact that you dropped some of the links to like some of the people that are on the show. So I follow them on LinkedIn, and they're posting some good things as well. Like, when they're reposting articles and things of that nature. And I too have tried with the AI, I went on one of these AI platforms and tried to see if they would classify something. So it's like it made me interested in seeing what would happen using like the AI platform. But classification is because it's our future. And it's like they don't really talk about it much, but now I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the articles it just made me more interested in just learning as much as possible. So yeah.
Well, I love this. I will say that with what you're talking about, since we're talking about AI so much, just remember that AI is not, and this is where some people get themselves into a quandary when they start relying too much on automation. The AI functionality should help at least improve your productivity, let's just say 50%. So in other words, let's say it classifies everything that you've got going right now 50% of the time accurately. And as you're looking at, you go through, and as time goes on, it starts learning how things are going on. So it's going to improve that. But the point being is, you don't have to have 100% of everything. It's already done it. And so it's for you to double check it. It's like, yep, this is fine. This is good. Wait a minute. This is one that you flag it, put it to the side, and you keep going through your volume and all that. So processing volume of transactions AI should help dramatically, but don't let it be the thing that, oh, it's going to solve all that and we can get rid of everybody. No, it's now I can apply my expertise onto those things that truly are a problem, and the simple things the AI is already taken care of. So I love that. I'm just curious, is that how did you find SimplyTrade? How did you discover our show?
I found it through, I think it was either somebody that I worked with when I was in Oregon, or Kelly Kimlock, her podcast. I don't know. Yeah. So it was either a cross reference, and I was like, whoa, there's two people talking about trade. This is insane. Nobody talks about trade. Like, who knew that this existed? Yeah. And I was like, it was just so crazy to me. I was like, this cannot be real. Like, these guys are talking. And so I started to listen, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have found my people. Like, it made me feel so good, because it was just a resource where we were speaking the same language and just talking about current events or other issues. And I'm like, oh, that's how this works together. Just providing a better understanding, because unless you are in a unless you have, you're in a department where maybe like Nina, there's probably a couple people in your department. There's not really anybody else to talk to. And so just hear the conversation and the subjects, it was like a relief, and also a blessing. I was like, oh my gosh.
I learned about you guys at the ICPA conference in San Antonio when you were broadcasting, and I was like, I kid you not, I had not been in the role no more than like about a month. So it was such I was like, I saw you guys, at your booth, and then I was like, oh, SimplyTrade. So then I thought like, hey, when I get back home, I'll, try to give it a listen. And because I never thought that there would be a podcast about trade, like it never dawned on me that there would be podcasts about, trade. Like I had no idea. None. So once I got back home and I started listening, I just really couldn't stop. I was like, I was on a roll for a while.
I think I learned mine through global training maybe. And then that got me to the crowd, the platform, because, I'm the perpetual student, literally the perpetual student, trying to come back in it from a different angle. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to try this podcast thing, but it'll be over my head. I was convinced it would have been over my head. There was just no way I was going to be able to keep up. And it really took me by surprise. It really did.
So Andy and I, when we first started talking about the show, I actually approached him, and we've probably said on the show many times, but I approached him like 3 years ago, and he just had been busy doing other stuff. And right around March, I guess, of last year, we started talking and formatting the show. How are we going to do this? And we both concluded that what we wanted to do was that we were going to do a show that is as if we're sitting around anywhere and at a bar or having lunch or something with a bunch of trade people and just chatting, you know what I mean? And not have a script, not really. We haven't scripted anything, and they say, I don't know if any of you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, the Larry David on HBO. Apparently he does his show that way. He has a premise for the show, but no script. And the actors just go with it, which is kind of crazy. But anyway, I don't know if it's true or not. But anyway, I'm just saying that's what we thought we would do, and it's actually worked out well. And we're glad that. I think that also sets the tone in not having to go over your head either. You know what I mean? Because it's not scripted, and we're not using all these fancy words, that are scripted for us and telling us we should say this, and we're just talking to you all, we're okay. Well, we're glad that message is getting through also. So, and like I said, that's part of the goal that Andy and I had.
Well, Lalo's being kind, because what he's trying to tell you in another way is I'm too dumb to handle the fancy words. So
I find that hard to believe, Andy.
Listen, I will say in all sincerity, and I've said this before, Lalo has had more faith in me than I did myself regarding this being, for us hosting the podcast. And I'm like, who wants to listen to some dumb country boy, bloviate on something here? But as we get into it, it is just intriguing to me. Like Larry Hansen's shows you talked about, that was phenomenal. We've had lots of people on there, and I just love, with my past experience, I've actually been in Europe, for example, and have attended meetings with the World Customs Organization, WCO, as well as then, you hear about the WTO, World Trade Organization, and some of the challenges on that. And so as we get into some of these, what does that mean? You hear people talking about policies and all that. Well, I always have to break it down to go, why is this a big deal? And what's it mean to me? And I have to take things through that step and break it down. So, well, this is what it means from an export or an import or, jobs or this economy or that. So hopefully that comes out without a jumbled mess, but I just have to break it down. And I will say that Lalo has done a great job in pulling all of this together. And so as we look at this, I will say, are there any recommendations you would like to see? What would be some of the craziest ideas for a show that you'd like to see?
I would like to hear people talk about what their experience is when they start in a compliance role. Like, what are the things that they look for, and how do you get it up and running? And that's just where I'm at right now. And so it's interesting. So I think the show meets demographics for people who are just coming in. If I was writing an SOP, I'd say, listen to SimplyTrade. This will help you get an understanding for terms and kind of what's going on, and pick an episode that you want to delve more in depth with. And then there's people who have been in the industry like yourselves for 25 or however many years. And so that intersection is amazing, right? Because you're bringing that knowledge for people like us who are just coming into it, and it makes it more approachable, and it removes the barrier. So, but for me right now, like, just how am I going the right way? Like, are we doing this right? Like, I think this is right until somebody tells me it's not. Like, this is what we're going to do.
What's also very new and informative, I'm just like Ken Whitney, I'm just excited that we found the platform that this even exists. Because I was like, wait, what's happening here? Are they actually discussing these very same things AI had questions about and dare not ask because you're not sure where you're at on the learning curve of it all? So, but it's just all very new and very fascinating. But I could see a time where I your listeners get invested enough where they're like, yeah, I think I need to hear a little bit more about this.
I guess kind of bridging the gap, because even though like I can understand them, but sometimes I feel like the average person just may not understand it. Maybe have some, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to think of
maybe like fundamental or basic
like a little more
trade. Like, you're just coming in, maybe you're just like coming in, you heard about trade and you just learned about it. And so what are the basics? Like, these are the terms. These terms mean this. For the longest time, 3461 and a 7501. What's the difference? Like, wait, what's the difference between an entry and an entry summary? Maybe just like the basic things that somebody who's just coming in and helps them understand the language and what these things mean.
And also, like, if you had an episode, and maybe you have, and I could have missed it, but like, a lot of people may not know even some of the careers that you can have in brokerage. Like, I like hearing the backstories of how a person, they got into the business and some of the jobs that they've had. Like, that's what I've been doing. Like, with some of the LinkedIns, I would go in, I'm like, oh, well, they started XYZ. Sometimes I feel like because I kind of entered the the industry late in the game. Like sometimes, I may not have the confidence that I can, go further in the, trade compliance. So it'd be nice if there's like someone that maybe started a little later in life.
Oh, there's so much that, I mean, career-wise, there are so many different things, especially what I've just heard from all of y'all with your background. Here's the one thing. A lot of people will get into compliance and then they're thinking, well, I'm very limited and whatever. But I can tell you this, Teresa, your sales background, as you were just talking about. Well, guess what? There's a lot of things that you can do to translate compliance things into more simplistic things, just using your sales skills to be able to communicate within the company. Other things of everything what you guys just did, understand this. Any experience and training that you had is not going to waste. So it's unbelievable what you can do. And then you take what you've got and then be able to network with some other folks so you can come alongside. And here's what's key. Coming alongside other areas, because just like you're in compliance and going, holy crap, I got to build this from the ground up, or am I heading in the right direction? Because like you just said, many people out there are one-man shops, okay, or one-person shops. And as you're out there, it's like, okay, guess what? There's going to be other areas where I guarantee you there's going to be leaders, and they won't admit it, and they're going to be looking at it and going, no, I'm fine. I got it under control. But if you get them away and get a beer or something with them and a cup of coffee and you start talking to them, they're scared to death. Well, guess what? Two people walking individually on railroad tracks, you're going to fall and whatever. But if you reach over and grab somebody's arm and they reach up and grab your arm, you can walk on those rails very quickly and down together. So two together is better. The sum is greater than the individuals. So I'm just telling you, your experience is unreal.
Yeah, I agree with Andy.
Lila, I would say maybe it would be just having come in off the exam, right? Exam prep. Maybe that you guys recap the exam, or, I think that would be beneficial. Just for people to understand. I was so discouraged because this is my third time taking it. I was like, I said, maybe trade is not for me. Like, maybe this is not for me. Like, and somebody said, don't give up. You can do this. Don't give up. But just discussing that with people, right? And I think most people know that it's not an exam you pass on the first time typically. Like, there are people who do, but just reiterating that after the exam, like, hey, you may have to take it a couple of times. Don't give up. This is what we understand. Or I don't know, just to recap that when it happens, because I think that there's some people who have passed it. And then there's others like myself and Teresa for myself, I was like, I don't think this is for me. I don't think trade is for me.
That would be a great show.
That would be great.
Now that I think about
that would be a great platform because in that case, and I'm shocked how many people are taking it. Like those that have been there forever, attorneys, compliance. Nina, you should join us and just take it. Also, it's like, I'm just saying, I'm trying to get everyone to take it. But anyway, it's just mind-boggling. Even sitting in the room waiting to get called out, I'm like, God, if this person's, I don't stand a chance. Or then it's just amazing. I agree, because it's important.
So one of the goals that we've been trying to accomplish, like moving forward, and as you all heard, we hit our 50th episode, which we were like, wow, we were blown away, because we anticipated having one show a week. That would have been a year, when you hit your 52nd show, but we did it in 8 months. So we're like, okay, cool. So we're doing something right. But the thing is that we started to reevaluate how the show is, how we're putting it together. And we thought, okay, we've had a lot of service providers, for example, attorneys and consultants, software providers, logistics providers, et cetera, which are great. They have a lot of good information. So then I started reaching out to, and I think this would address a lot of what you guys are saying as far as, like, am I going the right direction and putting my import manual together, or my export manual, or my compliance manual, is having an actual practitioner. So here's the challenge that we have, is that a lot of them need to get it cleared with their legal or somebody, and so just so you all know, that's the direction. We do want to have a lot more practitioners. I have like 6 or 7 in the pipeline there, but they just can't get on, because they're still trying to get it cleared. Number 2, we're trying to get government officials to come on the show. That would be great if we can have someone not necessarily disclose anything that the government puts them at a disadvantage, but at least say, you should reach out to us this way or that way. You know what I mean? And have you understand. So again, because of conflicts of interest, they are still trying to work that out. And then lastly, we did talk to some people who have told us, well, that's nice that you talked to us about the, Whitney, you talked about the AI for classification. We had another one that was AI for forced labor. We had 2 of them, in fact, that were AI for forced labor. Well, thank you for talking about it, but can you show it to me? So we're actually thinking of doing a visual version of our podcast and calling it Demo Day, for example, where we just show you the software. And so we're thinking that might, I don't know if those resonate or not, but anyway, so that's where we're trying to do, or where we're trying to go with the show, and we hope that'll work. But I love the idea of like a post-exam show. I know somebody who on the day of the exam, she has a session and gathers everybody in a room, virtual room. And so she starts going through all the questions, because you all take the question sheet and you take it home, and the whole group just starts going through it, and how well you did on that day based on a consensus, not based on the real answers. On the answer key, but based on a consensus. So that would actually be cool if we could be the fly in the wall in that session, right? That would be cool. I don't know. So, but I like that idea. I do like that idea, and maybe I'll try to still get somebody on the show to talk about this most recent exam, especially because it was 5%, pass rate, 5 point whatever, and then maybe even before the next one, like, okay, this is it. This is crunch time, guys. Next week is the exam. Let's do this. You know what I mean? Or something like that. But yeah, I do like those ideas.
That's a common place we're all going to be at or are in when we're taking that exam, irregardless of your background.
And then what do you do after the exam? Like then what, how do you structure your life after the exam, after you've been studying? You just don't even have to think about plans, because you're like, oh, I just have to study. That's what I have to go to work and I have to study, and figure everything else out. But just post exam and, moving forward, I think to Teresa's point, it just makes it like we're all in it together, which I don't know anybody in my immediate area who's taking it. Right. So just having a place where people are talking about it, you're like, okay, I'm not alone. Everybody's feeling this way. Like, here's, it just makes it more of a community feel.
And Lalo, and throw in there those that have been through there and passed it, not just
right.
All of us,
Yeah.
Right.
Especially with Nina being so new and up and coming, things to look forward to, avenues, to explore. So.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I just want to invite people to connect. I'll definitely be reaching out to you ladies on LinkedIn, and really thank you for hosting a show that removes the barrier and, just making it more real, like Nina said, right? Like making it more real. And so it's approachable. Like you're not stupid for having a question or whatever that is, because nobody really knows. Even people have been doing it for 20 years. So I think that's good to maintain going into trade and further building your career.
Great. Thank you. How about you, Teresa?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Whitney's saying. Just thanks for having the format, for allowing, those of us that are learning or, in all levels of this, of the industry. At first I was like, oh yeah, that seems like a great, fun idea. And then all of a sudden it was like, ooh, probably not. You start hearing who's a compliance person, who's a broker, and you're like, oh, maybe not. And then it turns out that, in the end, you're pretty much part of the same community. So it's very helpful. Very helpful.
Sure.
Great structure.
Awesome. And Nina, do you have anything?
I think Whitney and Teresa both said it all. I just want to thank you just so much for what you guys are doing.
Awesome.
You just don't realize just how helpful it is. And, just know that you are reaching people, and we appreciate what you're doing. And I just look forward to, your next episodes and seeing what you guys have out there. And thank you for inviting me as well
Awesome.
to speak.
Oh, no, sure.
Thank you so much.
Listen, I just greatly appreciate y'all. The one thing I was going to say is if you can, on the exam, one of the things I was going to ask you is if we took the test, here's the explanation, this is what you're looking for and kind of stuff. Would that be a good show for y'all?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, the exam, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Anything.
Well, I will say this, and Whitney, I'm like, if you get your, or any of y'all, if you get your scores back and we start going through, feel free to reach out, and I'd love to see, what some of the questions you may have missed. Keep in mind, I've gone to take the test 45 days before the test. I personally went to tried to study, and I scored. I think it was I missed it by 2 points, but the questions I missed were classification, and I'm not a classifier, but I achieved what I wanted, which is a working knowledge of the regulations. I didn't need the license. I was like, nice to have had it, but it was like, guess what? I literally have been in situations where I've debated issues with customs and with customs attorneys, and knowing the regulations. So I've got a working knowledge of it. You need to look at it. If it's a requirement of your job, then we'll figure out ways to help you get through that. But anyway, all that to say, y'all have
Andy,
been absolutely fantastic.
I would have your producer edit out that last part, because we're not going to believe this "I'm as dumb as a box of rocks" comment, right, Whitney?
Right? That's what I'm thinking. I'm like,
Wait a minute. You just lost us, Andy. Have her edit that out, because I have no sympathy for you. I'm Team Lalo. You are not as dumb as a box of rocks. Whitney and I are struggling here. We're like drowning. You're describing the water. This is 45 pages. I missed two.
missed it by 2. I'm like, exactly. I've been studying for a year, and he missed it by 2. Like,
okay, Andy.
I'm trust the last thing I could ever come across is being boastful, and I'm not trying to do that. Listen, I was just lucky. Let's put it that way. Okay.
he said, yeah.
What did you say?
That's what I was Now when you say
I will say stay with it.
Rocks, I will laugh even harder.
Well, I will say that. Yeah, all of that. I think what do you call it? The Andyisms or something? I don't know. I never think about it. If I had to sit down and write out all my stupid sayings, I couldn't do it. It just rolls off. So Anyway, well, ladies, you have been an absolute pleasure to talk with. I think I'm going to have to create some stickers.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Thank you very much, Andy. We really appreciate this.
Yeah, well, and Lalo, I mean, I know this is that, ladies, you've made us proud as peacocks. So I'm telling you, we'd be strutting around the barnyard here with all these comments. Y'all have been gracious and fantastic. So we really, really appreciate y'all.
You got it.
Thank you very much for joining us. SimplyTrade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor SimplyTrade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com or You can DM us on Twitter at SimplyTradePod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. SimplyTrade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by SimplyTrade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.